The crowd's laughter echoed as she stepped onto the mat. Jeans, a faded hoodie, and no formal GI in sight. This isn't a place for amateurs. The finalist sneered, cracking his knuckles. But 6 seconds later, the arena fell silent. The champion left sprawling. Welcome to Graceful Stories. Let's uncover what really happened. I wasn't supposed to be here. That's what I kept telling myself as I walked through the heavy doors of the convention center where the state karate tournament was being held. Jeans, a simple black hoodie, and worn-out sneakers. Hardly the uniform of fighter. The polished mats gleamed under harsh lights, and everywhere I looked, there were perfectly dressed competitors in their pristine GIs, faces serious and eyes sharp with focus. No one paid me any mind. If they noticed me at all, it was with barely concealed sneers. I was just the woman who shouldn't be here, the one who looked out of place like a shadow in a room full of spotlight seekers. The registration volunteers raised their eyebrows, but took my form. No questions. Maybe they thought I was crazy, or maybe they simply assumed I wouldn't last more than a round or two. Either way, I was already winning because I showed up when most wouldn't dare. I glanced around the waiting area where the other competitors stretched, slapped on hand wraps, and warmed up with their coaches. They talked about their belts, their victories, their legacies. I didn't have a coach. I didn't have a fancy gym membership. I didn't have a history of trophies or medals to wave around. But I had something else, a quiet strength and years of secret training, taught not in crowded dojos, but in solitude and determination. I was here for myself, to prove that appearances and labels don't define what you're capable of. As the announcer called the next round, I stepped forward, heart pounding but steady. The murmur of the crowd grew louder, a mix of amusement and disbelief. They thought this would be a show, a brief moment of entertainment before the real fighters took the stage. They didn't know how wrong they were. The moment I stepped on a mat for my first match, I felt every pair of eyes bore into me like I was an intruder. The crowd was buzzing, half curious, half ready to sneer. My opponent, a tall, tattooed guy with a gleaming black belt, barely glanced my way before cracking his knuckles, smirking like he'd already won. "Nice hoodie," he said loud enough for the crowd to hear. "Lost your GI at home, princess?" Laughter rippled through the stands, and I could feel the sting of every whispered comment. They didn't see me as a competitor. I was a joke, a sideshow in their carefully crafted tournament drama. But beneath their mocking words, a quiet fire ignited inside me. The referee signaled us to begin. The crowd's chatter fell into a heavy silence. I steadied my breathing, mind clear, body ready. Years of hidden practice weren't about to go to waste just because I looked different. My first move was cautious, a low block practiced 1,000 times in my small living room. His reaction was slow, surprised. Then I struck, a quick jab to the ribs, followed by a spinning kick aimed at his side. The crowd gasped. My opponent stumbled, a flash of confusion crossing his face. I saw it. The moment he realized I wasn't what they'd expected. Within seconds, I landed a clean sweep, knocking him off balance into the floor. The referee's whistle blew sharply, and the match was mine. The stunned silence in the arena was palpable. I could almost hear the disbelief thudding through the air. My chest rose and fell, heart racing but proud. No one cheered. No one rushed to congratulate me. Instead, I caught the sharp glances, the sideways whispers. They weren't used to this. A simple woman with no fancy gear or pedigree, standing tall. I wasn't just here to participate. I was here to shake the foundation of their expectations. And this was only the beginning. Most people don't believe you can learn karate in a small apartment, with nothing but a worn-out mat and a handful of YouTube videos. They think you need a dojo, a coach, a crowd of classmates cheering you on. That's what they assume. But they don't know my story. For years, I trained alone. Early mornings before the city stirred. Late nights after everyone else had gone to bed. I'd clear the furniture, roll out a threadbare mat, and move through katas I learned by watching old tapes and practicing every move until my muscles burned. I wasn't training to impress anyone. There were no tournaments to win back then, just a desire to reclaim myself after years of feeling powerless. Karate became my refuge, a way to build strength when everything else felt fragile. My life wasn't easy. I had a day job that barely paid the bills and a past full of moments I'd rather forget. But on that mat, alone in the quiet, I found control and clarity. I became my own teacher and toughest opponent. People see my jeans and hoodie now and think I'm unprepared or out of place. They don't see the nights spent perfecting a spinning back kick or the mornings I woke sore and bruised but refused to quit. They don't see the sacrifices, the missed dinners, the empty weekends, because no one cared about a woman like me. Today, stepping into that arena, I carried all of that with me. Every lonely training session, every whispered doubt I'd silenced inside my head. No fancy gym, no team, no mentor, just me, my grit, and years of quiet work. I wasn't just an underdog because of how I looked. I was an underdog because no one had given me a chance. But I was here to change that. The moment the announcer called my name, a wave of nervous energy swept over me. My first official opponent. I looked across the mat and met his eyes, a stocky guy with a trimmed beard and a smirk that spoke of confidence earned from countless victories. He wore the cleanest GI I'd ever seen, the kind that smelled of fresh detergent and discipline. His black belt was pristine, a clear sign he belonged here. The crowd buzzed with anticipation. Some whispered, "This will be quick." Others barely hid their amusement at the sight of me. The bell rang. He charged immediately, a flurry of punches aimed to intimidate. I dodged the first strike and countered with a crisp palm strike to his chest, the kind I'd practiced hundreds of times. It wasn't about brute force. It was precision and timing. My heart pounded, adrenaline flooding my veins, but my mind stayed sharp. He underestimated me, and it showed. His attacks became sloppy, predictable. I saw my chance. With a sudden pivot, I landed a sweeping kick that caught him off balance. He stumbled backward, eyes wide in shock. The crowd gasped, not out of encouragement, but disbelief. Then I moved in, a swift combination of punches and a finishing sidekick. He hit the mat hard. The referee raised my hand. For a moment, the arena was silent. No cheers, no applause, just stunned faces trying to process what had just happened. One of the judges whispered something to a colleague, both shaking their heads as if denying reality. I felt the weight of their disbelief, but I also felt something else, a quiet validation. This was more than a win. It was the first crack in the wall of doubt they had built around me, and I was ready to shatter it. After my win, the atmosphere shifted, but not in a way I expected. Instead of congratulations, the crowd's chatter morphed into whispers, eyes darting between me and the other competitors. I caught fragments of conversations, words like fluke, luck, and no way drifting through the air like smoke. They didn't want to believe I belonged here. A woman in jeans and a hoodie, no formal GI, no team backing her. How could I possibly survive the tournament? The whispers were weapons, aimed to chip away at my confidence. One of the more seasoned fighters, a tall woman with a sharp gaze, caught me off guard during warm-ups. She approached slowly, a faint smile playing on her lips. "You got lucky today," she said, voice low but edged with challenge. "Don't get too comfortable. This isn't a game." Her words stung, not because they were untrue, but because she said them with such certainty, as if she knew the outcome already. I nodded, keeping my face neutral. I wasn't here to argue or prove myself to strangers. I was here for me, but the doubts gnawed inside. What if this really was luck? What if I wasn't good enough? The trainers and organizers exchanged uneasy glances. I overheard a judge remark, "We'll see how long she lasts." It was less of a prediction and more of a silent verdict. Even some spectators openly bet against me, whispering odds and shaking their heads. But beneath all the doubt, something unexpected began to grow. Curiosity. How did this simple woman, with no team or formal training, defeat a seasoned opponent? Why was she still standing when others had already bowed out? The whispers wouldn't stop, but neither would I. I knew the tournament wasn't just about skill. It was about breaking barriers, shattering expectations. And no amount of doubt could silence that fire burning inside me. Word spread fast. I could feel it in the way the room's energy shifted when the reigning finalist walked in. tall, imposing, his black belt wrapped tight, a glare that said he owned every inch of that mat. The champion of the state, undefeated for years, and the kind of man who made opponents tremble before the fight even began. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. As I warmed up, he stepped close, voice low but dripping with disdain. "You're the joke everyone's been talking about," he said, eyes sharp and cold. "Jeans, hoodie, no coach. You don't belong here." His words cut through the murmurs, silencing the crowd. Every head turned. I could feel their anticipation, waiting to see how I'd react. But I didn't flinch. I met his gaze squarely, voice steady. "I'm here to compete. That's all." He smirked, cracking his knuckles, flexing his fingers like claws. "You're going to regret stepping onto this mat." The referee called us forward for the next round. The air grew electric with tension. As we bowed, the champion's smirk deepened. His confidence was absolute, his arrogance palpable. The crowd's eyes were glued to him, expecting another swift victory. But I knew something he didn't. Years of silent struggle, hours of private practice, and a determination that no one could see beneath my simple clothes. He was a mountain. I was a spark. And sometimes, that's all it takes to start a fire. That moment before the bell was a silent battle. Who would break first? I felt my heartbeat steady, breath measured. The champion grinned, waiting for the match to begin, convinced the outcome was already decided. He hadn't met me yet. No one knew why I started training in karate. To most, I was just a simple woman with no history in martial arts, just a face in the crowd. But beneath the surface was a story few ever saw. Years ago, I was broken in ways that didn't show on the outside. Life had thrown punches that left bruises deeper than skin. The world felt like a cage I couldn't escape. Karate wasn't just a sport or hobby. It was survival, my way of reclaiming control over my life when everything else felt out of reach. I spent countless nights watching videos, reading books, and practicing alone. I wasn't looking for trophies. I was searching for strength, to stand tall, to protect myself, and to rise from the ashes of fear. When I told friends I wanted to enter this tournament, most laughed. "You? Against trained fighters? You're out of your league," they said. Maybe they were right. But I needed to try, not for their approval, but for mine. Every kick, every punch, every stance carried the weight of my past and my hope for the future. I didn't train to impress anyone. I trained to prove to myself that I could be more than what life had made me. This tournament was my reckoning, a chance to show the world, and most importantly myself, that strength comes from within. No matter what happened on the mats, I was no longer the woman who felt powerless. I was a fighter, and this was just the beginning of my story. Just when I thought the tournament was a sea of skeptics and snickers, something unexpected happened. Amid the cold stares and hushed whispers, a seasoned coach approached me. He was older, with silver streaks in his hair and eyes that had seen countless battles, both on the mat and off. His presence was calm, but commanding, like someone who understood more than just the techniques. "I've been watching you," he said quietly, his voice low so only I could hear. "You've got raw talent, but you need guidance if you want to make it through." I blinked, surprised. After all the doubt and dismissal, here was someone offering a hand. I hesitated. I wasn't used to being helped. I had trained alone for so long, relying only on myself. But something in his eyes, a mix of respect and belief, made me nod. Over the next few days, Coach Daniels showed me small adjustments in my stance, subtle shifts in my footwork. He didn't sugarcoat my mistakes, but he also saw my potential. More importantly, he treated me like a competitor, not a curiosity. He warned me about the challenges ahead, the skill level, the politics, the biases that often ruled these tournaments. But he also believed I could break through all of it. For the first time, I felt part of something bigger than myself. A team, a mentor, a path forward. Coach Daniels didn't just help my technique. He helped me see that my journey wasn't just about fighting opponents. It was about fighting the doubts, both theirs and mine. With his guidance, I felt more prepared than ever to face whatever came next. And I wasn't alone anymore. The second round arrived faster than I expected. My nerves were tempered now, replaced by a simmering focus. The crowd was different this time. Less amused, more watchful. Word had spread about this simple woman who shocked the first round, and eyes were fixed on me like I was some wild card. My next opponent was a tall, lean fighter with years of experience and a reputation for speed. As we faced off, I could feel his confidence radiate like heat. He smiled, cocky and sure. "You're not bad," he said, "but this is where your luck runs out." The bell rang, and he struck immediately. Fast punches, lightning jabs aimed to test my defenses. I ducked and weaved, my muscles responding on instinct, heart pounding rhythmically. Coach Daniel's advice echoed in my mind. Stay calm, watch his movements, don't get rushed. I saw a pattern, a brief pause before his right hook. Timing was everything. As he launched, I stepped aside and countered with a clean strike to his ribs. He grunted, surprise flickering in his eyes. The match became a blur of motion. Kicks, blocks, feints. Each moment tested my stamina and skill, but I pushed through, fueled by something beyond physical strength, determination. The crowd was silent, tension thick enough to cut. I caught glimpses of faces, some skeptical, some impressed, others unsure. Minutes later, I landed a sweeping kick that sent him sprawling to the mat. The referee's whistle blew. Victory. The disbelief was palpable. This was no fluke. I was more than a surprise. I was a contender. As I stepped off the mat, Coach Daniels gave me a brief nod, pride shining in his eyes. The whispers turned to murmurs of respect, the atmosphere shifting. But the hardest battle was yet to come. The champion's eyes were already on me. While the tournament floor buzzed with action, something darker lurked beneath the surface, behind-the-scenes politics and whispers that threatened to cut my run short. Between rounds, I overheard hushed conversations in shadowed corners. Officials debating whether someone like me should even be allowed to continue. The kind of gatekeeping that wasn't written in any rulebook, but controlled everything. "She's shaking things up," one organizer muttered, fingers tapping nervously on a clipboard. "This isn't how the tournament is supposed to go." Another voice, cold and clipped, replied, "We can't have an outsider embarrassing the regulars. It sets a bad precedent." I felt the weight of their decisions like a tightening noose. The system wasn't built for people like me, the quiet fighters without connections, without pedigree. Even some competitors who had initially dismissed me now eyed me with thinly veiled hostility, their smiles forced. That night, Coach Daniels pulled me aside, his expression grave. "There's talk about disqualifying you on technicalities," he warned. "Not because you're breaking rules, but because you don't fit the mold. This is bigger than the matches." I clenched my fists, anger and frustration rising. Years of hard work, of silent struggle, threatened by invisible walls. But I refused to let them win. I reminded myself why I was here, not just to fight on the mats, but to fight for my place, to prove that skill and heart mattered more than appearance or politics. The next day, I vowed to face whatever came, head held high. Because sometimes the toughest battles happen before you even step onto the stage. And I was ready. The morning light filtered through the gym windows as I laced my sneakers, the weight of yesterday's whispers still pressing on my shoulders. But something inside me had shifted. The doubts, the judgments, they fueled a fire I didn't know I had. Coach Daniels caught my eye from across the room and gave a small nod of encouragement. I returned it with a steady breath. Today, I wasn't just fighting opponents. I was fighting every expectation that told me I didn't belong. The hall buzzed as the crowd gathered again, the tension thick but electric. I heard snide comments, some louder this time, others disguised as casual remarks. "She's tough for a novice. Lucky streak won't last." But none of it broke me. When my name was called, I stepped onto the mat with purpose. The opponents ahead were stronger, faster, with years of competition etched into their movements. But I'd come too far to back down. With every match, every block, every strike, I reminded myself why I started this journey. Not for trophies or fame, but for the woman who needed to believe she was enough, strong, capable, worthy. The judges watched closely, the crowd leaning in, some in disbelief, others beginning to cheer softly, as if rooting for an underdog who was turning into a force. After a hard-fought victory in a particularly grueling round, I stood in the center of the mat, chest heaving, sweat dripping, eyes bright with determination. The murmurs shifted, curiosity blending with respect. I wasn't just a simple woman anymore. I was a competitor, a fighter, someone who refused to be written off. As I walked off the mat, I caught the champion's eye from across the room. His arrogant smirk was still there, but for the first time I thought I saw a flicker of something else. Interest, maybe even concern. Whatever lay ahead, I knew this. I was ready. The semifinals felt like stepping into a storm. The arena was packed, every seat filled with expectant faces, cameras capturing every moment. This was no longer a surprise act. I was a real contender, and everyone knew it. My opponent was formidable, a fighter with a reputation for relentless aggression and lightning-fast reflexes. As he stepped onto the mat, his eyes locked on mine, a silent challenge in his stare. The bell rang, and we charged at each other, the sound echoing like thunder through the hall. His punches came fast and hard, but I stayed calm, relying on every lesson and every hour of practice. Block, counter, move. The dance was intense and unforgiving. We exchanged blows that left me breathless, every muscle screaming, every second stretched into eternity. The crowd was on edge, some shouting encouragement, others holding their breath. Midway through, he caught me off guard with a quick feint, a jab I barely dodged. Pain flared in my ribs, but I pushed through it, grit steadying my breath. Then came my moment. Seeing an opening, I stepped forward, delivering a precise combination, a palm strike, a roundhouse kick, and finally a sweeping leg kick that sent him tumbling. The referee's whistle blew, and the crowd erupted. I stood there, chest heaving, sweat mingling with tears of relief and triumph. This wasn't just a win, it was a declaration. I'd earned my place. As I caught my breath, I glanced over to the champion, waiting for the final round. His expression was unreadable, but I sensed a change. The underdog had become his next true challenge. The road ahead was daunting, but I was ready to face it head-on. It was hard to believe the change. Just days ago, the crowd sneered and whispered, doubting me at every turn. Now, as I stepped off the mat after the semifinal, the atmosphere was different, electric with newfound respect and quiet awe. Spectators I'd never seen before approached with nods and words of encouragement. "You've got heart," one said. "That was incredible." Another called out, "You're making history today." I caught glimpses of faces previously filled with doubt, now watching me with something close to admiration. Even some competitors, who had barely hidden their scorn, gave curt nods as we crossed paths in the hallways. It was a slow, subtle shift, a ripple through the crowd that grew stronger with every match. I was no longer the oddity in jeans and a hoodie. I was a fighter who had earned her place. But amidst the respect, there was still tension. I could feel the champion's eyes on me, his smirk replaced by a calculated calm. He was no longer dismissive. He saw me as a real threat. That evening, in the quiet of my room, I replayed the day's events. The cheers, the whispers, the changed looks. It wasn't just about winning matches anymore. It was about breaking barriers. The crowd had turned, but the fight wasn't over. I wasn't just battling opponents on the mat. I was battling the invisible walls of expectation, prejudice, and tradition. And every nod, every word of encouragement was a small victory against those walls. I wasn't just here to compete. I was here to change the game. The final match was looming, and with it came the champion's full force of arrogance. The man who had ruled the tournament with an iron fist now stood across the room, exuding the kind of confidence that could crush most challengers before the fight began. He didn't hide his disdain for me. In fact, he made sure everyone knew exactly what he thought. During the opening ceremony, as the announcer introduced the finalists, his voice carried loud and clear. "A simple woman making it this far? Amusing," he said with a sneer. "But she won't last long. This is my domain." Laughter bubbled through some corners of the crowd, feeding off his bravado. When I entered the arena, he followed, eyes locked on me like a predator assessing prey. His smirk was a challenge, daring me to prove him wrong. He taunted me openly, pacing the mat, cracking his knuckles, flexing his fingers with deliberate showmanship. "Ready to lose?" he jeered. "I'll be done with you in seconds." The crowd responded. Some jeered, some cheered. The tension was palpable. I felt the weight of every eye in the arena, some hopeful, others doubting. But beneath all that was a current of electricity, the anticipation of an upset or a decisive victory. The final match wasn't just about skill. It was about pride, judgment, and the chance to rewrite expectations. As we bowed before the bell, I met his gaze with unwavering calm. This was my moment, and no amount of arrogance would steal it from me. The night before the final, the world outside faded into silence. The hum of the city, the chatter of the crowd, it all felt distant. What remained was the steady rhythm of my own heartbeat and the quiet resolve settling deep inside me. I sat alone in my small room, the familiar weight of my worn hoodie wrapping around me like armor. My hands traced the scars on my knuckles, the marks of every practice, every fight, every moment that had led me here. Coach Daniels had been right. This wasn't just a match. It was a battle for respect, for breaking down every doubt and prejudice stacked against me. I went over every move, every counter, every stance. Visualizing the final fight became my meditation, my shield against fear. I knew the champion style: fast, aggressive, confident to the point of arrogance. But I also knew his weakness: impatience. My plan wasn't to match his speed or strength. It was to be precise, to wait for the moment he slipped and then strike without hesitation. As I practiced slow, deliberate movements, I reminded myself why I started this journey. Not for trophies or glory, but for the woman who refused to be invisible. I pictured the faces from the crowd, the doubters, the haters, the silent supporters. This was for all of them, but mostly for me. By the time sleep finally came, it was deep and unshakable, like the calm before a storm. Tomorrow, I would step onto that mat, not just as the simple woman they mocked, but as a fighter who belonged. And no matter what happened, I was ready. The arena was packed, every seat filled, the air thick with anticipation. The spotlight felt heavy as I stepped onto the mat for the final match. No more whispers or side glances. This was it, the moment that would decide everything. The champion was already there, waiting with that same confident smirk, black belt gleaming under the lights. The crowd erupted in cheers for him, but when my name was called, a hush fell. We bowed respectfully, the traditional start to every match. The crowd leaned in, breath held. The referee raised his hand, then blew the whistle. Time slowed. His eyes locked on mine, fierce and unyielding. His first move was aggressive, a rapid flurry of punches aimed to overwhelm. I dodged, stepping back with careful balance, steady breath. The roar of the crowd faded into the background. It was just the two of us, his strength and my will. I watched, waited, reading his movements like a book I'd studied for years. Every strike was a test, every block a promise. Then, a fleeting moment, a misstep, a breath held too long. I seized it. With precision and speed honed through years of practice, I moved forward. A sharp palm strike to his chest, a spinning kick, and then the move I had been waiting for, a sweeping leg kick that sent him crashing to the mat. Silence. The referee's whistle pierced the stillness. I stood frozen for a heartbeat, heart pounding so loud I feared it might echo through the hall. Then the crowd erupted. Gasps, cheers, stunned applause. I had done the impossible. The champion, stunned but gracious, nodded in respect as I was declared the winner. The simple woman in jeans and a hoodie had taken down the finalist in 6 seconds. The moment the bell rang, the champion came at me like a storm, fast, relentless, and ruthless. His fists flew with practiced precision, aiming to overwhelm and intimidate. The crowd roared behind him, feeding his confidence. I ducked and weaved, my body moving on instinct. Years of training rushed through my veins, every block, every parry, a testament to the countless hours I'd spent preparing alone. But he was strong and aggressive, pushing me back step by step. He sneered mid-fight, loud enough for the crowd to hear, "You're out of your league. This will be over soon." I didn't respond. Words had no place here. Only action. He threw a rapid jab, then a sweeping hook. I felt the air brush past my face, narrowly missing, but I stayed composed, eyes locked on his movements. My breath steady, muscles coiled, waiting for the moment he faltered. The crowd was electric, some cheering for the champion, others watching me with a new kind of anticipation. In those early seconds, it felt like a battle of wills as much as skill. Every strike I avoided was a declaration. I belonged here. Every block was a refusal to back down. And beneath it all, a quiet confidence grew. Because I wasn't just surviving, I was studying, watching for his weakness. And I knew it was coming. In the heat of the fight, when the champion's punches came faster and harder, something inside me shifted. The adrenaline surged, but it wasn't panic, it was clarity. For years, I've been training for this moment without knowing it. Every late night, every lonely practice had led to now. I saw the pattern, a brief hesitation before his left hook, the way his balance shifted slightly when he prepared to strike. It was a crack in his armor. As he launched his hook, I stepped aside with lightning speed, feeling the rush of air where his fist would have landed. Without hesitation, I countered a quick jab to his ribs, then a spinning back kick that caught him off guard. The crowd gasped. For the first time, the champion's confident expression faltered. His eyes widened in surprise. I felt the tide turn. The roar of the crowd dimmed as focus narrowed on us. A battle not just of skill, but of wills. The champion tried to regain control, but his attacks grew sloppy, rushed. I seized every opening, every moment of weakness. That turning point was mine. The moment when the impossible became real. When a simple woman in jeans and a hoodie stopped being underestimated and became unstoppable. In those few seconds, everything slowed and sharpened. The crowd held its breath, eyes fixed on the mat where I faced the champion, the man who had never been defeated. The moment I spotted his imbalance, a slight overreach in his right foot, I knew my chance had come. I moved with precision and purpose, my body flowing through the moves I had drilled 1,000 times alone in silence. A palm strike cracked against his chest, sending a shock through his frame. He staggered, surprise flashing in his eyes. Before he could recover, I spun, delivering a lightning-fast roundhouse kick aimed just below his ribs. His breath caught. The crowd gasped, but I wasn't finished. With one fluid motion, I swept his leg from beneath him, and the champion crashed to the mat with a heavy thud. 6 seconds. That's how long it took. The referee's whistle sliced through the stunned silence, signaling the end. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then the arena exploded. Gasps, cheers, shouts of disbelief. The impossible had happened. I, the simple woman dressed in jeans and a hoodie, had knocked down the champion in 6 seconds. As I stood, heart pounding and breath ragged, I met his eyes. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something new, respect. The crowd's energy shifted from disbelief to awe. In that moment, I wasn't just a competitor. I was a symbol, proof that strength and determination could shatter every expectation. And the fight, my fight, had only just begun. The arena went utterly silent. The roar of the crowd before the match had vanished, replaced by stunned disbelief. No one could believe what they had just witnessed. The champion, who had once ruled this mat with confidence and arrogance, lay sprawled on the floor, the simple woman who had been dismissed and mocked standing victorious. Faces froze mid-cheer or mid-gasp. Some mouths hung open, others tightened in disbelief. It was as if the world had been flipped upside down, the rules rewritten in a heartbeat. Spectators exchanged wide-eyed glances, struggling to process the upset. Whispers, once so loud and certain, now hesitated, faltering in the face of undeniable reality. A few gasps rippled through the crowd, growing slowly into a tentative cheer, a cautious celebration of the impossible. Across the arena, the champion slowly sat up, chest heaving, eyes locked on me. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a hard-earned respect. His lips parted in a nod, silent acknowledgement of the battle lost. For me, the moment was surreal. My heart thundered in my chest, and every breath felt like a victory itself. Years of doubt, struggle, and silent practice culminated in this electric, unforgettable instant. No words were needed. The silence spoke volumes of shattered expectations, of underestimated strength, and of a simple woman's triumph. As the referee raised my hand, the crowd erupted in genuine applause, cheers echoing through the arena like a wave. I looked out at the sea of faces, some still shocked, others smiling, many inspired. In that silence before the storm of celebration, I realized something profound. I had changed more than the outcome of a match. I had changed the story itself. As the referee lifted my hand in the center of the arena, the cheers washed over me like a tidal wave. Unexpected, overwhelming, and deeply affirming. The simple woman they had doubted, mocked, and dismissed was now the champion. Not just of the tournament, but of something far bigger. The noise blurred into a hum as I took it all in. The crowd's applause, the flashes of cameras, the clapping of competitors who once sneered now nodding in respect. Their expressions told a story I never thought I'd see. Acknowledgement, even admiration. Walking off the mat, my legs still trembling from adrenaline, I caught Coach Daniel's eye. His grin was wide, pride shining through every line on his weathered face. Without a word, he nodded. That was enough. Later, in the quiet backstage room, I let the adrenaline fade and the weight of the moment settle. I wasn't just victorious in a fight. I was validated, not because I needed their approval, but because I had proven to myself that determination, grit, and heart could overcome every barrier. Messages of congratulations and awe flooded in from strangers and newfound supporters. People who had seen me as an underdog now looked to me as an inspiration. But amidst the celebration, my mind turned to the champion I had defeated. I thought of his initial arrogance and the humility he now wore. I hoped my victory was more than a personal triumph, that it was a message. Never judge a book by its cover. That simple woman, dressed in jeans and a hoodie, had rewritten the narrative. And I knew this was just the beginning. Because true victory isn't just about winning. It's about breaking through the walls others build around you. The days after the final were a whirlwind. Reporters sought interviews, social media buzzed with my story, and the tournament that once felt like a distant dream suddenly became my reality. But amidst the excitement, the true work began. The champion's reaction surprised me. Instead of bitterness, he showed humility, a rare grace in defeat. We spoke quietly after the tournament, and he admitted that I had earned his respect. It wasn't just about skill. It was about heart, perseverance, and refusing to be defined by others' expectations. But beyond our personal exchange, there was a larger ripple. Organizers, competitors, and even spectators started questioning their own biases and assumptions. How often had they judged someone by their appearance? How often had they written people off without knowing their story? Messages poured in, from aspiring fighters, women who'd felt overlooked or underestimated, people inspired to chase their own dreams despite the odds. It was humbling and overwhelming. Yet, I knew this wasn't just about me. It was about every person who had ever been told they didn't belong. This victory was theirs, too. Still, challenges remained. Some tried to dismiss my win as a fluke or a lucky break. But I was ready to keep proving them wrong, one match at a time. Through it all, Coach Daniels stood by me, a steadfast reminder that even the loneliest journeys are better when shared. As I looked ahead, I realized this was more than a tournament win. It was a turning point, a new chapter not just for me, but for the sport, for the community, and for anyone who ever dared to defy expectations. And I was ready to keep fighting. The atmosphere around the tournament had transformed completely. Where once I faced sneers and dismissive glances, now there was an undercurrent of respect. The organizers had made subtle changes, more inclusive language, openness to outsiders, and a recognition that skill comes in many forms. Competitors who had once ignored me now nodded in greeting or offered a quiet word of encouragement. Some even sought advice, curious about how I trained alone and defied expectations. It wasn't just about fighting anymore. It was about community, growth, and breaking down the walls that had kept so many out. At the awards ceremony, the champion who'd faced me approached with a firm handshake. "You changed the game," he said. "I underestimated you, and I'm glad I was wrong." That moment meant more than the trophy. It was a passing of the torch, a recognition that courage and determination transcend appearances and backgrounds. I thought about the journey, the nights alone training, the doubts, the whispers, the battles inside and out. None of it was wasted. The crowd's cheers rang louder now, not just for me, but for what I represented, a reminder that anyone with passion and grit could rise. As I looked around, I saw younger fighters watching me with wide eyes, hope blooming in their hearts. That was the real victory. The tournament was no longer just a competition. It was a beacon for those who dared to dream differently. And I was proud to be part of that change. Standing on the podium, the weight of the medal around my neck felt less like a symbol of victory and more like a promise, one I intended to keep. This journey wasn't just mine. It belonged to every person who had ever felt invisible, underestimated, or dismissed because they didn't fit the mold. I thought back to the quiet nights alone training, the whispered doubts, the sneers from the crowd. None of it had broken me. It had forged me. Now, I wanted to be the spark for others, the proof that strength, heart, and perseverance mattered more than appearance or pedigree. In the days after the tournament, I began mentoring young fighters from all walks of life. Those without fancy gyms or coaches, those who needed someone to believe in them. Each story I heard reminded me why this fight mattered. Because fighting isn't just about the mat. It's about resilience. It's about hope. It's about daring to stand tall when the world expects you to fall. As I looked into the faces of those I coached, I saw a future brighter than any trophy. And I knew my legacy had only just begun. The simple woman in jeans and a hoodie had taken down the champion in 6 seconds. But more importantly, she had knocked down walls and opened the door for all who would follow.